so first things first, I have two sets of type here, identical on the left side and on the right side. On the left side, up here, you'll see some left justified type, some full justified type, and again, a few words and numbers down here that we'll be playing around with towards the end. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is looking at the rag and making sure that we can soften it. And the first thing I'm going to do is select this. And sorry again if you can hear my laptop. Sounds like it's about to take off, and that's just how it is. Anyways, I have my type here, and I have my InDesign set to typography up here, again, because that sort of gives you all of the tools that you'll need easy access to in order to do all the things type related. And if you select the text box and go over to paragraph, you will see a couple boxes here, and you want to check the hyphenate. So I've checked the hyphenate button, and already it's looking much, much softer. Let's do this side by side. I don't know why it won't let me drag up, but you can see that the rag on this untouched type is quite jagged, and it still needs a little bit of work here, but it's a really, really good first step. Now, as I'm looking through this, I want to make sure that we're using hyphens properly, because that's what we just turned on, and that there are no widows and orphans. Having the hyphens turned on already took care of the widow that was at the end here and made it so that it's no longer. However, I see that we have two hyphens in a row here. There are going to be a few different things that we can do to try to remedy that, and we're just going to try things and see how it goes. I did not try this ahead of time, so we're going to make some mistakes here, and we're just going to play around with it to see how we can fix it. So the first thing my mind says is that it kind of looks like there might be enough space here for these three letters. So I'm just going to grab this whole line here and take the tracking, which is going to be right up here, and go -5, and then let's try -10. Alright, so that did not help me at all. I'm going to go ahead and undo that and see what would happen if I did -10 to both of these lines, and that took care of that altogether. And you can see just by looking at it that it's still looking pretty comfortable. Nothing is looking too skewed. When you are tracking lines of text in and out, you want to make sure that you're not tracking more than plus or minus 10, because otherwise it starts to look a little bit too squished or too spaced out. So if we do like 50, you can see that it looks a little bit odd compared to the rest of the type. And if you go like -50, it looks very squished compared to the rest of the type. And then, 5 and 10 are fine as well. And you can also do somewhere in between. You could do 7, and you can just input it manually, but they have these preset numbers in here already. Alright, so that is one thing that's already been fixed, and the rag is looking alright to me, but I'm still going to go in and try to make it not as extreme by fixing the tracking in specific lines of text. So it looks like this line here I can track out. This line here I can track in. Let's go -5. Maybe I don't need to do the whole thing because I don't want to mess up what I already have going. And then these 4 I can track out. And you want to work actually top to bottom, but I'm going backwards here a little bit. Let's go out on this one. And let's go a little bit in on this one. Okay, so let's see how this is looking. Alright, so it's looking much softer than before. I'm thinking that I'm going to track in the second to last line and track out the last line. Oh, it's already tracked out, so I'm not going to touch that. And you guys, the shortcut to do this preview is just Shift W, and that will easily show you this sort of preview view of what you're working on. I love to do this as much as possible so that I can kind of see how it's looking. So I would say that this is looking much better than what it did by default. So this is something you should be doing on all 4 of your layouts. All right, any questions so far? Do things sort of make a bit of sense here? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the full justified text. Again, these are totally unaltered, just total default type without any changes. So first things first, this is full justified type, and you want to make sure that the last line on full justified type is always left aligned. That will make sure that if you full justify everything, it might look okay like it does right now, but it could also stretch out the last line of type from this side to this side, and it would be tracked out way too much. So the first thing I want to do again is go ahead and select my text box, go to paragraph, and turn the hyphenations on. Alright, so let's look at this side by side already. So as I'm looking at this side by side, you can see once again that hyphenations is helping tremendously. You might not be able to see it right away, but hopefully by the end of this assignment, you'll be able to pinpoint what's working and what's not working in this very micro scale. So you can see the type on the right, although we have a widow here, the spacing between the words and the spacing between the letters on the right side is much more consistent and cohesive than on the left side. On the left side, you can see that there are some gaps, some spaces that are much bigger than others, and that is something that you want to avoid, and maybe that's something you wouldn't even notice until after you've turned the hyphenations on. Okay? So hopefully that will help you sort of figure out what sort of things you can do in order to make sure that things are looking nice. All right, so there's a widow here, so we got to take care of the widow. Let's see how we can go ahead and do that. Let's try to track this in and see if that will help. The orphan, it did not. Maybe we can do the whole body, -5, -10. Okay, so that really helped take care of that widow. And maybe I don't need it to be as extreme as -10. Maybe I can try -7. Okay, -7 works. Let's try less extreme. Let's try -5. -5 does not work. Let's try -6. Also doesn't work. -6.5. Nope. -7 it is. So we're just going to leave it at -7. All right. So that is, those are ways to fix the rag in your left aligned and full justified type. And now I want to sort of show you guys a little bit of a few different ways to emphasize things. And in the lecture, we had sort of talked about using small caps, italics, bold, underline. After you fix like how your type actually looks, I want you to actually go and read the type. Read the text that you have downloaded. As a designer, it's really, really important to make sure that whatever type you're dealing with, that you actually read it. Because you might be able to find some typos that the author or whoever's text it is has made, and that could fall on the designer. Even if the editor didn't catch it, maybe the designer might catch it. So go ahead and read the type and see which areas you might want to emphasize using small caps, italics, bold, underline, things like that. If there are any acronyms that are in all caps, you want to make sure that you make it into small caps. If there are words that you want to make bold or italicized, you can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to emphasize the first line of type here. Wine is so strange and potent a thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this first line of text, and up here in this area you will see that there are options with the capital T, and this is for all caps with the 2 capital T's, and then this is for small caps, the big capital T and the small capital T. So if I highlight my type and then press the small caps button, it will create small caps for my first whatever I highlighted. And actually I might go ahead and change the first letter to a small what's it called, a lowercase letter, so that when I do the small caps it makes it in all caps but smaller, if that makes sense. And let's go and read this further. Okay, so let's take the word thought and let's make this bold. So if you highlight your word, you can always go to up here and do the bold option there. You can also go to character and do that in here as well. And if you want, you can also go and italicize. Right, let's do regular. There we go. So these are ways that you can make your body of type a little bit more interesting and more dynamic to read. All right, and then if you want to underline something, what should we underline? Let's see. Let's underline this, and maybe we'll un-underline it. The underline option is right up here. You can click that, and that will underline. All right, I'm gonna undo that because I feel like there's too much emphasis happening here. And please do not use all of the modes of emphasis, especially in one paragraph, because you want to make sure that it's not looking too crazy either. All right, so there we have the left justified type with the streamlined rag and the full justified type with the streamlined spacing. And then down here, I wanted to sort of show you guys a little bit how to kern between letters using the M dash and N dash, and show you also how to create the curly versus straight quotes. So this again is just here by default. I have not touched the tracking or anything like that, and you can see that with some letters, because of the shape of the stroke, that there is a little bit of extra space that has not been accounted for, so you might need to track this in. So, I mean, you might want to kern it in. So above the tracking option up here, there is a kerning option as well. So if you highlight the area where you want to kern, let's see if this will allow me to kern. Okay, you got to select in between, and that will kerning is basically setting the spacing between two letters. So you gotta click in between and then use the kerning option there, undo. Usually I just use the shortcut for it, so I go in between, hold down option, and then just use the arrow keys. So if I use the arrow keys, I can go all the way in, all the way out, whatever it might be. So I'm just gonna go, okay, let's do the default first. Okay, this is the default. I'm gonna go between Y and E, Y and E, and then I'm gonna hold down option and go left, and that will bring the rest of my letters closer together. And I'm just going to use my eyes and visually see where else I might want to do that. Let's do that with the other Y as well. Just one, and then again, you can see them side by side. I actually think that I kerned it in a little bit too much, so I'm going to kern it out slightly. There. Alright, so that is how you kern using the shortcuts and up here as well. And then if you were to, track everything out, if you wanted to, you guys know how to do that using the tracking option here. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the M and N dash. Does anybody remember back from the lecture when you are supposed to use an M dash and when you are supposed to use an N dash?
N dash is for dates.
Which one?
I think for using date when you're typing in dates.
Did you say M as in monkey or N as in no?
As in no.
Correct. N dash will be used for numbers. So over here, by the way, these are just regular dashes. They are neither an N or an M dash. And in order to create an N dash, which is the shorter one, which is used for numbers, the way to do that is just option and minus, or option and dash, and that will create the N dash. And does anybody remember if you are supposed to put spaces around the N dash?
No spaces.
You are supposed to put them around the N dash, and you are not supposed to put it on the M dash, which is the longer one. So we'll put one space here and one space here. And again, if this spacing is looking awkward to you, you can track it in. So you can bring it in so that there's still technically a space, but it's not as big of a gap as you might want it to be. All right, now the M dash. The M dash, the shortcut for that will be to do Shift Option minus, so or Option minus, Option Shift minus, either one, I think. Let's try it actually. Yes, so either you could do Option Shift minus or Shift Option minus, and that is the longer one, which is used between words. All right, and for this, you should not use a space around it. But again, if it's like a little bit too close, you can track it out very, very slightly like such. All right, and then the last thing was quotes, curly quotes and straight quotes. Does anybody remember when you are supposed to use a curly quote and when you are supposed to use a straight quote?
Curly quotes is for words, right?
Correct. So for a curly quote, you can just do the regular shift and quotes, like such. And then for straight quotes, you do Control Shift quotes. There you go. All right, so as far as this demo goes, that is all that I wanted to go over. The main thing is making sure that you are using the proper proper use of hyphenations and you're streamlining your rags. There are no widows or orphans. And just making sure that everything is looking comfortable to the eye and appropriate in terms of how many characters and what size your column widths are. All right, so with that, are there any questions? All right, well, hopefully this was helpful. And if you do have any questions, I will be around